Hold your palms, close the eyes, let's do the invocation. Om. 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 Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopa karottam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi abahu purushakaram shankha chakrasidharinam sahasra shirasam shvetam pranamami patanjalim. Harihi Om. Salute the Lord within. Release your arms, open your eyes. We were looking at silence. And at the end of the class, as usual, I asked like any questions. I was aware, and I think you were aware, nobody wanted to talk. Which means at some level, the class was successful. But then noise begins. But there is a kind of silence that I don't like. After teaching Tuesday class, same thing carried on kind of, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we had a lot of fun. And Saturday, my phone rang. It was my younger brother's wife. They usually call me when they want some money. But this call was very different. She said they are in Colombia. And my brother went into the ocean for a swim, had a heart attack and died. And it's a silence to which I cannot relate as a silence, because although there is a shock and we shut down, behind that shutting down there is incredible noise going on. All the memories come up. And my mind wants to look at behind all those memories. There is a divine silence. And yet the mind doesn't want to go there, because it is disturbed by this shock. While we appreciate the deeper divine silence, we don't want deathly silence. And yet I look at a baby born, which tickles all of us. And what I have to remind the mind is that the baby cannot be born. Believing in yogic theory, baby cannot be born unless somebody died somewhere and it is reincarnated. I don't know where my brother would reincarnate, or he already reincarnated as a little baby somewhere. Certainly, if I see the baby, it would feel nice. And behind that, there is a feeling and awareness that slowly grows stronger, that everybody, without exception, is born, makes a lot of noise, and dies. And in between, there is some peculiar silence, which is beyond deathly silence. Deathly silence is something that mind immediately experiences and doesn't like. What I want to remember, though, remind the mind almost continuously, that while there is all kind of noise going on, while I am alive in this body, there is that silence which is always there, which is never disturbed, which cannot be disturbed. And in that silence, there is a very particular kind of peace. So I look at pranayama practice, taking in prana, and on exhalation, removing through that same prana some energy of the breath. That is also noise. Paying various attention to what happens to this air that goes in and out. All of it is noise. And yet, as I practice pranayama in a quiet place, I become slowly more and more aware of that underlying quiet peace that cannot be disturbed. It gets disturbed as the mind tries to pay attention to a variety of things. So rather than look many different things in pranayama practice, today I'd like to look at just one thing. As I take the breath in and as I breathe out, with reference to my breath, other than the breath, what is it that my mind goes to? Not to outside problem of life, death, and other problems of life, but with regard to my inhalation and exhalation. What does my mind immediately go to? What is the first thing that it addresses? And for different people, it may be a different part. But doesn't matter what part that is. Can the mind stay there throughout the practice of pranayama until the teacher says, stop, relax, lie down? And see that behind that kind of focus or attention, there is still underlying noise that keeps coming. Can that noise stop? You can't force it. Forcefully stopping the noise does not work. but I let the noise dissipate, dissolve. Every time mind goes to something else, it is a noise. So let's begin the pranayama practice itself in lying down position. Take whatever you need to use to lie down. Lying properly, making whatever adjustment I want to make. Taking a good minute to make all the adjustment. Telling myself continuously that I will arrange the body as best as I can. And take the minute or 2 minutes to make that arrangement. But at some point, draw a conclusion that I will not disturb the body any further. Short of the house catching fire or something, I will not disturb the body at all. So in that non-disturbance of the body physically, there is at least a physical silence. And then decide in your own mind, taking 2-3 breaths. As I inhale, where is the mind immediately going to? And wherever it is that mind goes to, whatever part of the body, can it stay there, breath after breath after breath? Not looking for a change, just looking at being. Whatever part the breath goes to, more than the breath, the prana goes to. Apart from the whole body being alive, feeling alive, there is a particular kind of life, particular expression of life in that one location where the mind immediately goes. And I want to look at the underlying silence of this particular part. And so today I would like the mind not to go to a variety of aspects of pranayama practice. The place to which the mind immediately goes, underlying that particular space, what is the silence? Can that silence, with reference to that particular part of the body, can that silence grow? Can that silence become more and more and more profound? Whatever else the mind tries to go to, gently bring the mind back to silence behind this one particular part of the body. And what I discover is that when that one part creates noise, then many other parts begin to create noise. If I don't want all the other noise to come in, rather than look at different kind of noises that come, can I just stay with this one particular part? And whatever noise goes on in that one particular part, I want to look at the silence behind that noise. With the God-given pranic energy, constantly nourishing it not towards better health or less health or anything else, nourishing it towards the silence. If this silence has to grow longer, let it become longer by deeper breath. Through the breath, I take pranic energy to this one particular part of the body. Not to seek anything other than silence underneath that particular part. If I allow noise to grow in this one part, not pay attention to that the noise is growing, then that noise seems to grow to many different parts. Fortunately, if that is true, it is also true that if I find silence in this one particular part, that silence will also grow everywhere. I don't want to make it grow. I'm just being a witness. I find I'm not making an effort to make the breath soft or long. Breath automatically becomes longer. in response to this underlying silence. Often instruction given in pranayama is slow, soft, deep inhalation, slow, soft, deep exhalation. The mind attempts to make this, but in an attempt to do this, it forgets the underlying silence that I am now referring to. Anything I want to pay attention to in the pranayama practice, I don't want it a decision of my mind, of thought. Thought is the biggest evil. I want that attention as a response to this silence. So if I say, is the inhalation touching the outer walls of the nostril that I have learned somewhere I refer to, while that is a desirable state, can that be a response to this silence in one chosen part of my body? So that it becomes like a chicken and egg story. The more I'm aware of the breath touching the outer walls of the nostril, the bigger the mind recognizes this underlying silence in one part. And as it recognizes this particular silence, a deeper response of this silence, the way the breath touches the outer walls of the nostril itself becomes more refined. This refinement is not noise after noise after noise. It's a deep, you're drinking prana. Anything that I try to do with the breath that disturbs the underlying silence of my chosen area of the body, I don't want to go there. When I think of the breath touching the outer walls of the nostril, the way I want to experience that is in the way that increases that underlying silence of one chosen part. Then I want to look at the exhalation also, but not in an attempt to manipulate the breath in any way, but rather seeing that as that awareness grows of the exhalation touching the inner wall of the septum, does it increase, enhance that underlying silence of one chosen part of the body? The attention of inhalation also can continue. Now both with inhalation as well as exhalation, the underlying silence of my chosen part grows further and further and further. On inhalation as well as exhalation, the pranic energy nourishes this silence. And every time I catch the mind running somewhere else, not forcefully, but gently, I bring it back. Or I look at, is this disturbance happening because of something else in the body? Like my tongue getting tight, my eyes getting burning sensation, pain in the ears. Whatever disturbs this particular moment I'm looking at, I avoid that disturbance by silencing it. If there is a burning sensation in the eye, rather than call it a burning sensation and try to do anything with it, I simply want to go with a mind there and create a deep silence there. That silence I create in the eyes is such that it nourishes this underlying silence of one part of the body that I chose to work with. Extreme corners of the eyes fall away from each other, not as a mechanical manipulation, but so that the pranic energy which helps to create that movement of the eyes releasing away from each other, as that tension is released, it nourishes this chosen underlying silence. Other than my instruction, my guidance, if the mind goes anywhere else, and you attempt to do anything with that particular part where the mind goes, see that that nourishes this underlying silence of one chosen part of the mind, of the body. Make that a mantra. Mantra meaning repetitively go there. Those of you who are comfortable doing this, look at inhalation retention of the breath. Don't do that retention mechanically. There is some mechanism involved in retaining the inhalation retention, but do that as a response to this silence. So the silence of holding the inhalation retention in turn nourishes the underlying silence of one particular part that I chose to work with. What I'm attempting to ask you to do, I hope I'm successful. Anything you do to, to, to do anything with the breath and with the prana, it must create more, deeper, underlying silence, at least of this one particular part of the body. Later, you can create in many other parts. Before you come out of that position to sit, tell yourself you will disturb the body minimal amount to come out, so that this underlying silence that you are trying to nourish does not get disturbed. With minimum disturbance to this silence that is created in one chosen part of the body, slowly come out of the position and sit. Sit, make whatever adjustment you need to make, hanging on to, holding on to this underlying silence of one chosen part. Now that you are sitting up, don't change that particular location. Stay with the same location. Begin with normal breath. Recall that underlying silence of one chosen part. The mind will invariably say, I want to go to another part. Don't do that. Prayerfully go back to the same part. Slowly begin to increase your breath. So it is a response to that silence of one chosen part. And that response in turn creates even more silence. And if you decide to go from this, basically Ujjayi Pranayama, if the mind decides to go to Nadi Shodhana Pranayama, let it be a response to silence. Don't mechanically go to that Nadi Shodhana. The way I would go to Nadi Shodhana Pranayama is as though that attempt is coming from the silence. And then as I begin Nadi Shodhana Pranayama, that silence grows. Sometimes I would do Nadi Shodhana Pranayama without using my hand. If the movement of the hand is disturbing to this underlying silence, I don't use the hand. And what I learn in the process is that if my response to everything does not recognize that this one part that I have silenced is becoming disturbed, and the rest of the noise is a response to that disturbance, then life outside also is disturbing. And with some training, I have the capacity to see that rather than me responding to outer disturbances, it is my inner silence that creates the silence outside. I'm no longer a victim of the noise. The noise will continue outside, but I'm not a victim of that noise. There is that underlying silence where my breath immediately touches. And the strength of that silence as it grows will stop disturbing responses. And so if a response happens to something outside, that response is a silence. It is not more noise. The teaching is that after I finish this pranayama practice, I respond to whatever is going on in my life. But whatever that response is with reference to anything that's going on in life must in turn nourish my inner silence, even though I may call it disturbing. Karmically, whatever I am presented with becomes an opportunity to reinforce this inner silence. It may be outwardly disturbing, like the war in Ukraine. But I take that opportunity to say this is definitely disturbing, but can it really be very different in that it is my opportunity to teach my mind to generate more silence? So that slowly one learns nothing outside happening can ever disturb the deep inner silence. If I allow that disturbance to happen, life is wonderful. It will offer you more and more and more chances to disturb. You need not be disturbed. Which is not to say you become callous to whatever is going on. Rather, your ability to deal with whatever is going on outside becomes much more refined and better if this inner silence is held. On next exhalation, finish the practice of Nadi Shodhana. Take 2, 3 normal breaths after that. Next thing I would like you to consider is I asked you to look at something that can be disturbing and see that if I call it disturbing and I kind of fight with it, it disturbs this inner silence. Instead, I use it as an opportunity to let that inner silence grow even more. If that is true with regard to whatever is disturbing from outside, then there are many things going on in life that are not disturbing, that are very pleasant. The effect of those pleasant things becomes much more profound. In fact, apart from everything else that is going on, you are automatically doing one thing. You are breathing, breath after breath after breath, continuous, which is nice. You like it. You want it. Don't let that breath become simply mechanical. See that every breath, if a negative thing can be disturbing to the silence, every breath should be incredibly celebrated as a growth of that silence. Go back to Ujjayi breathing. By all means, take deeper breath as you want. Even hold inhalation, retention as you want. But do it so it is celebrated as much bigger nourishing of this underlying silence of one part that you chose. Or if the mind goes to something outside in life that is nourishing, that is pleasant, even then, don't look at it casually. Make it come back to prana practice and create even greater, more profound silence in this chosen part. Finish on an exhalation. Stay in a seated position, 1 or 2 more minutes. And I would like you to take the mind to the sound that the breath creates. Breathe in such a way that you hear this sound. See that this sound is not a disturbing sound, rather, it nourishes that underlying silence. One more minute. When you lie down to relax, not fall asleep, when you lie down to go through conscious relaxation, this sound of breath continues, only it becomes much softer. Keep listening to that sound in Shavasana, not as a struggle, but so that it constantly creates much deeper kind of silence in your chosen part. Go ahead and lie down. Bring mind again and again and again back to see that the sound of the breath creates deeper underlying silence. As you listen to the breath that way, the sense of deep space in the ear goes deeper and deeper and deeper. It is endless. Unless the mind is trained, it will tend to go somewhere else. If you find it going somewhere else, the fact that you discover that it is going somewhere else, regard that as a blessing. Bring it gently back. Then stop making any effort to listen to this sound. Drop all the effort. Simply be. Don't become. Be. So that every moment that is experienced is complete in itself. It has no past, no future. There would come around the sense of I am, I am, I am. From I am, can the I drop away? There remains amness. The silence of that amness is divine. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Enough today. Take your time without holding the breath, without disturbing that inner silence. Roll to the right side and sit. If you are an actor acting in a play, you are on a stage. While you are on the stage, you can't say, I'm not going to act. you want to treat life a little like that. You are on a stage in this life. You have to act. But that act need not, while if you're on a stage, as you're acting, you don't forget. If I'm acting, I don't forget I'm Ramanand. Similarly, as you act in life, there are many things that may be disturbing, may not be disturbing. But you don't want to lose that inner sense that you are consciousness. All right, as usual, any questions, comments? Or are you too silent? Thank you. Namaste.